When you go to a restaurant and they have a sign that says they're out of food, which is fine, but then you try to go back like 2 or 3 months later and they're still out of food, it probably means that they're actually out of business, which is very sad, but sometimes it just happens. And sometimes when restaurants have moments where they don't know if they're still going to stay in business, especially if they've been out of food for quite a while, because it's just they lose money and they lose customers for not having food. And sometimes that happens. Hi everybody, it's Mena. Welcome back to my channel, or if this is the very first video that you're seeing of me, then welcome to my channel. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you didn't already. I post every day except for Tuesday and Friday afternoon sometimes, and as you can see, I'm knitting a project here, and today I'm going to do a knit with me story time. And today's knit with me story time is going to be the time I went to this restaurant with my dad and my brother. And when we got there, the whole restaurant was completely closed. They were out of business and they were out of food. And then because they had a sign that they were out of food, but then my dad tried to go back like 2 months later after he had taken us. And it turned out that the restaurant actually really was out of business and not really out of food. So this is a story just to teach you guys that if you try to go to a certain restaurant and they have a sign that says they're out of food, and then it's perfectly fine because sometimes that does happen. But then when you try to go back 2 months later, and they're still out of food, it actually means they're actually out of business, which is pretty sad. But sometimes that can happen. So I'm gonna get started, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. So this all started about 21 years ago. It was a couple weeks before, it was the week, I think, or so before my brother and I started school, and we were spending the weekend with my dad, and my dad wanted to take me and my brother out to breakfast. So my brother and I when we were kids, we used to spend every other weekend at our dad's house, and that weekend was my mom and my stepdad at the time's anniversary, so they were just staying at home for the weekend by themselves. And my dad had us for the weekend because he would have me and my brother every other weekend. So he had us for the weekend, and he wanted to treat me and my brother out to breakfast, and it was a Saturday. So we decided to go to breakfast at this one restaurant. I'm just gonna say the name of it just because I don't know if this restaurant, I don't remember, I think this restaurant's a chain, but this restaurant is actually no longer in business. It's been out of business for years. It's called Emile Villas. So he decided to take us to Emile Villas, and he used to take us to Emile Villas a lot when we were a kid. It was a really good restaurant. I liked the food and stuff, and they just had pretty good food. They had really good like hamburgers and stuff, and I really liked the hamburgers. I'll have to tell you guys another story about the one time I ate breakfast at the restaurant when my dad and my brother had lunch. So anyway, my dad decides to take us out for breakfast, and he wants to go to Emile Villas just because the other restaurants, I think it was like later, I think, or is it early? I don't remember, but he wanted to take us to Emile Villas for breakfast. So we decided to go to Emile Villas. So we get in the car, and we get there kind of early, but we don't get there at sunrise. We get there a couple, like, I think right when they're supposed to open. So we go there, and the parking lot is completely empty. And we're confused. So, sorry. And we're confused why the parking lot's completely empty. There's no cars in the parking lot, and this Emile Villas was right next to a Safeway. And so we decided to go up to the restaurant. We look inside, no lights are on, and everything looks dark, and we can't even see what's going on in the restaurant because it's so dark. So we go to the front door. My dad tries to open it, but the door is locked. And we're like, what's going on here? So he looks and he notices the sign and it says closed. And then there's a little note on the door and it says out of food. And he's like, oh, the restaurant's closed for the day. They're just out of food and blah, 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 blah. We can go somewhere else. So my dad takes us to another local restaurant. My dad, my brother, and I leave, and he takes us to another local restaurant. And we have a good time with breakfast because we actually kind of got there early, like I said, because that restaurant Emile Villas would get crowded. So he decides to take us to another restaurant. It is kind of like frustrating because it is like it's around maybe 9ish and people are getting in for breakfast. So he tries to take us to a couple places, but some of the places are actually already or it's either a little too early and they're not open at the moment, or a lot of the places were crowded. So my dad felt bad that he couldn't take us to Emile Villas, but my brother and I were super flexible because he took us to another restaurant where we could have breakfast and sit down with them. So we had a really good time just hanging out with my dad for breakfast, and that was all that matters, despite the fact we both were disappointed that we couldn't go to Emile Villas. So my dad goes back to Emile Villas like 2 months later, and they're still out of food. So I think he had tried also to call the number too, but it turned out that the restaurant actually went out of business, which he was kind of sad about because he liked that restaurant and he liked taking me and my brother there. And my brother and I were kind of sad that the restaurant went out of business because we liked going there with our dad and spending time with him at that restaurant. But it sometimes just happens, and it's a part of life. Sometimes not all restaurants make it, and they have to just close their business. So the moral of the story is, if a restaurant has been out of food for like 2 months, it means they're actually really out of business, which is very sad, but sometimes that just can happen because you have to keep the restaurant open in order to make business. Because if you close it for 2 months just because you're out of food, then you're gonna definitely lose business, because restaurants cost money to keep up and stuff. And it was very sad that this restaurant closed, but it's just kind of a part of the life of having a business and owning a restaurant. So we didn't own this restaurant, just to clarify. It's just the owner closed it because I think he just couldn't keep up because he couldn't get the food in time, and he or she couldn't just like keep the business, and it was, I think, like getting too much to order food for the business and stuff. And sometimes that just happens, and sometimes restaurants don't make it, but it's just part of life, and we all learn when it gets too much to run a restaurant. So that was the story about the time my dad, my brother, and I tried to go to Emile Villas, and they were out of food, but it turned out they were actually out of business. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I post every day except for Tuesday and Friday afternoon sometimes. And I'll see you in another video soon. Bye.
If you like this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe.